We're so thankful that God has allowed us again the opportunity to assemble. I'm grateful for any opportunity that the good Lord gives me to share concerning the Christ and the Lord's church and all things related. We are huge in Bible study here at the Figueroa congregation. And my hope and my prayer is that we will be supportive of the exposition of the Word of God. So we're going to get started with the word of prayer. A lot to get to today. We will not be able to get through today's presentation in its entirety. So it'll actually be a two-part presentation, but we'll get started. I intended to get this handout to Sister Stephanie before I left Friday and just didn't get it to her. So I think Sister Emerson was able to pass it to the team in the rear. So the worksheet should be in your bulletin. If not, you can let me know and we'll see that you can get one. And then if you want it electronically, just give me your email and I'll be more than happy to get that to you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started this morning with a word of prayer. Shall we bow? Our great God above, you are worthy to be praised in all parts and all facets of our lives that you've touched. You've brought abundance, you've brought healing, you brought prosperity, you've brought everything that is good. Help us, oh God, to be mindful of that, even in days, even in times where we're being challenged. Help us to always rely on your great abundance. As we've assembled together this morning, we pray that the word that we will discuss will be encouraging to this thy people. We ask for traveling grace for several who are en route, and even those who are listening here, who are listening in the car, and who are in cyberspace. Welcome and good morning. In the name of Christ, our Savior, we do pray. Amen. Amen. Now, what I've been doing the last few weeks is looking at evangelism, at models of evangelism. And I looked at the Acts 2 model, which I want to be clear to not leave you with my thinking that's not the way to do it. I do think there is a place for shotgun style evangelism. We just can't put all of our eggs in that one basket. And the challenge is, I think for too many congregations, we've put all of our eggs in that one basket. Now, there's a lot to be said about what people think about the church and gathering today. Regardless of what you're hearing floating around in cyberspace, people still go to church. A lot of people still have a positive view of coming to this environment. A lot of friends and family would be open to coming if we'd invite them. And so I want to be clear that I'm not against that. It's just that for more longer term growth, I think we're going to need to look at the Matthew 4 model, and that's what I've been talking about. And based on many years of looking at the subject, I just think this is that this is the better approach. So a lot of what we've been doing has been leading up to today, in that today we're going to look at an idea where we look at the Matthew 4 model at a congregational level, and we're going to talk about infrastructure. And infrastructure is critical. Infrastructure is key. There is no long-term success without infrastructure. If, for example, from the entertainment industry, if you could think of what was happening in the 80s back with Michael Jackson, and many of us were around when Motown, that Motown 25 special hit, and he did that moonwalking thing. Many of us remember in '83 when Beat It came out and Billie Jean. One of the ways that Michael Jackson was made a global phenomenon is that the infrastructure was in place. The infrastructure, particularly around music videos, it was new. And for the most part, Black people really weren't invited to that world. Michael Jackson changed the game for all that. He was really the first megastar developed out of the video world. I've suggested to many that videos is still where it is, and I'll come to that at another time. But my point is that he was made the superstar that we know today because the infrastructure was in place. And that's not only with the label, that's with all the people that support the label, that's with all the people around the world. There's no mega superstar without that infrastructure. Now, you may have something that's really moving in the street and really doing well, but to really hit that top sustaining level, you're going to have infrastructure. And that's what we want. We don't want a gimmick. We don't want anything that, that's fly by night. We want long, sustained, systemic growth and prosperity and abundance that only comes about with the infrastructure that we have in place. Another example I'll quickly use, I'm watching, we just finished watching a series of TV episodes from a series called Yellowstone, and I try to pull examples from everywhere. But in this last scene, they were talking about pretty much in Montana taking over things. And when they first talked about it, they talked about it in big terms. But then when they got to it, their first major meeting was on infrastructure. And I said, boy, that is the way to do it, because there's really no attaining of the big picture without appropriate infrastructure. Now, here is one of our challenges. Most of us don't know about infrastructure. Most of us just go to McDonald's and we eat that hamburger about it. But to those of you who are administratively minded, you can appreciate everything that's involved in going to pick up a sandwich, because it's a lot more complicated than that. So what I'm going to discuss and what we're going to go through may not be all that interesting to you, or it could be, but there's no long-term growth without our examining our infrastructure. Now, here's the first little bullet I want to give with you today. We are structured to get what we have. We are structured to get what we have, and that's in almost anything. You look at a marriage, you look at a family, and you see how they're doing or not doing, how things are flowing or not flowing. It's because they are structured for that goal. You change your structure, you change your goal. You don't change your structure, you can try to change your goal, but eventually it will revert to the mean. Here is the great challenge: is we hate change. Not we don't like it, we hate it, particularly in this environment. We absolutely detest changing things. That's even if we can see it's not working. The sad thing about that is that's usually the beginning of the end, because all things change. All things change. There's nothing that you can point to and say, that's exactly the same as it was 50 years ago, and you can say that with a positive connotation. Would you go to a dentist that was schooled 50 years ago and didn't have an up-to-date license? Anybody? Would you want to be operated on by a surgeon who wasn't fluid in where technology and where things are today? My sister, she's an OBGYN. One of her specialties is that she knows how to operate with robots. And I remember her talking to me about that technology many years ago. That's one of her specialties, is operating with robots. Now, would you want to go and have somebody cutting on you who knows nothing about what's happening today in the field of healthcare? Well, of course not. We want to go see the doctor that has the skill, that has the expertise, that has the connections to help you deal with what you're dealing with today. So that same kind of mentality is what I want to encourage in this environment. Now, I've been at it over 30 years. This is all I've ever done. I have not seen a place that's been wholeheartedly across the board receptive to change, with the exception of the Greenville Avenue congregation in Richardson, Texas. And Felicia and I were there in our early years. We know the Gibbs family real well. As a matter of fact, Brother Gibbs is my oldest son's godfather. So we know them really, really well. I was at Greenville Avenue when it was Hamilton Park, back when they had about 500 or 600 members. And I remember them, all of their young people at the youth conferences, all that. I remember going to visit them when I was a student at Southwestern Christian College. And then I remember hearing them talk about congregationally about the change that needed to happen and how good it was going to be. Well, they moved to the outskirts of Dallas, heading north toward the airport. At the time, it wasn't any Black people out there, but they knew this is the way things were trending. This is the way that things were headed. Overnight, they went from 500 or 600, they doubled. And then 2 years later, they tripled. All right. They only got there. They're only still there because they have a certain kind of aptitude regarding change and being flexible and adaptable and evolving to meet the needs of today. This past year, they did something that I've never seen. First of all, they had a handful of elders on staff full time, which we don't really think about doing, but they hired a handful of ministers, and they're paying them well. Some of the guys that they had to hire were doing extremely well in corporate America. They had to match their salary. You talk about foresight and vision. Now, they may be struggling now in some ways because it's hard to duplicate people like Brother Gibbs. But in other ways, I think they're doing fine, and they're going to be just fine. They have a couple of younger guys, I think, that are really going to take them to the next level. So my point is that I want us to be thinking about our receptivity around change, because what I'm going to talk about today is all about you and how you can accept it. I want you to think about this more deeply than that just sounds good. That just sounds good. That's not really going to cut it. It's almost like when Bush came in. One of the many things I like that George Bush did is that he switched the focus around teaching to where even in the public school sector now, it's kind of centered around, what are the kids receiving? How are they being prepared? So it's more than just the dissemination of information. It's how are you receiving it? How are you applying it? And how that's impacting, in that instance, your studies. In here, how's that impacting your life? So what I'm going to talk about, I want you to think about in terms of your life, your family, your resources, and what you can do. If I can't move you, if you can't be moved by what you're hearing, then we're going to have great difficulty doing this at a corporate level. So if you have some problems, some questions, some anxiety around some of this, I certainly want to hear it. All right. So let's look at our outline. Does anybody need the worksheet? Hopefully you got it as you were coming in. All right. So I think we have some coming, so keep your hand up, and it's on the screen anyway. All right, if you want to copy this, I'll be more than happy to shoot it to you. All right, so we begin with those who lead the effort. In anything like this, it's going to begin with those who lead the effort. So we're going to be there in just a moment, but we have to be led by families who can commit to this approach. Some of the difficulty around that may be, is this something that you can do today, realistically? And you got to be able to answer that question. Some of what we're going to talk about is going to take some energy. It's going to take good health. It's going to take you being able to go places, do things, have people over and interact with people. Does it mean that you can't play a meaningful role? It's just that we got to have people up before us who's doing what we want to encourage the people to do. And it's not any more complicated than that. All right, so I will come back to that. All right, so who did Jesus target? And this is like I said, this is informal, so it'll sound more coherent as I'm sharing it with you, but on here it may not look so. But who did Jesus target? So let's talk a little bit about targeting. When Rick Warren brought out the purpose-driven church, there were a lot of people that was on his coattails because they felt like he was being too specific in who he needed to reach. Now, Rick Warren is we could probably say, the father of modern mega churches here in the United States. He's out at Saddleback. He is the man. I remember reading The Purpose Driven Church back in the early 90s and just being blown away with some of his approaches. He practices targeted evangelism, and I think that being targeted is a biblical concept. When you think about, for example, the Apostle Paul. Now, Paul would share the gospel with anybody, but who was it that God gave Paul to target specifically? The Jews, right? He was Jewish, wasn't he? Yeah, he was. Are you sure now? That is exactly right. Now, how about Peter? Who was Peter specifically called to deal with and to minister to? The Jews. Most of the instances when Peter got in trouble, not all, it was him trying to deal with both worlds. And I'm thinking about the churches in the province of Galatia. So as a concept, this is very common to have groups that we target. So for Figueroa, who is our target? Who are we best equipped to go after and to minister to and respond to? If, for example, this is a congregation where 98% of us speak Spanish, how effective do you think we're going to be with the Armenian population? Not very. Now, does that mean that we can't learn Armenian? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But it just means that at least at this point, we're probably best suited to deal with those who speak Spanish. So when you think about this approach, I want you to think about targeting and who we're best going to be suited to reach. Now, you can also think about targeting in terms of who you'd like to target and what you need to be successful in targeting them. All right. So let's say the other day I was talking to Brother Hawkins, and he went fishing with my brother, and they have a big, an annual fishing thing that they do with several guys from the church, and they're out in the middle of the ocean and they're fishing. And Hawk told me he caught all different kinds of fish. And did you use one kind of bait? All right. Yeah, he used different kinds of bait for different kinds of fish. Okay. They were successful because they had different kinds of bait, different kinds of strategy. Sometimes you want to shop and fish in more shallow water, sometimes deeper water. Sometimes you wanted to use minnows. Sometimes you want to use, other things. So what are we fishing for? What are we targeting? Okay, so let's say that we want to go after younger families. That's what we want to fish for. Okay. So if that's the case, what do we need to have in place to be successful in catching younger families? All right. Now, part of what you want to do is that you want to go back to that period in your life. And you want to be thinking about, okay, what did I have or what didn't I have? So we can start there if that's who we want to target. All right. Most churches want families with younger kids, but they're not infrastructured for that. You want churches with younger kids, you don't have no staff. There's no place, there's no monitor where, the service can be seen, and, there's no intercom system. There's nobody background check. I mean, you got to have a lot of things in place if you say that's what we want. Okay. So we are most often infrastructured for just getting together on Sunday morning. And I'm going to tell you this, I very seldom get upset and get angry. And it's not like Incredible Hulk, you know, you won't like me when I'm angry. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying, I know how this ends. When we stop pushing each other to be in alignment with what we need to do to keep this big thing moving forward. All right. So if we want to reach younger families, what do we need? All right. Now, this is just an open question I'm asking you. What are a few things? I just gave you a few of them. What are some things that we might need? So let's say that that this year, next year, we want to set a goal of reaching 40 families with kids ages 10 and under. What would we need? Very good. We need a functional, vibrant, attractive nursery. Stop putting the kids in the basement. Stop not having snacks and just, you know, all the things that people are used to today when they have younger children. Our bathrooms ought to have that thing that you fold down. That's for what? Changing what? Babies. Okay. Anybody else? What do we need? Yeah. That is correct. That's exactly where we're headed. Do we want younger families here? That's $1 million question. What your outcome says is the answer to that. So it's not really anything where we have to say yes or no. What we're putting out is saying yes or no. All right. So let's say, for example, let me just step back from my question. I'm going to come back to it. Let's say that we say we want to become the worship place in LA. We want this to be the best place for worship here. Everything in this room gonna change. All these pews gone, this carpet's gone, those stained windows gone. This has to be acoustically designed. All this has to be changed. This thing right here, this big old barrier, this big old dividing wall between the Jew and the Gentile, this got to go. This got to go. It's got to go. Why? Because it's, even if we wanted to come out and connect with you, we couldn't, because anytime anybody want to come out, they had to go all the way around. Now, I love the setup. It's cool. But I'm saying is what people see is what you're designed for. If we say we want this to be the worship point and we don't have any people leading us who are musically and worship oriented in their gifting, we'll get laughed at and ridiculed, because I guarantee you they can go right over to Noel Jones' place and see some Grammy level people on stage making it happen. So I don't mean no harm. I'm just saying what we're designed for is what we get. All right, so let's go back to my question. So you want young families. What do we need? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And that ain't everybody. Now, Felicia, yes, my wife loved little kids. I mean, she and I had 5. If we could have had 10, she would have been good. Well, I don't know about 10, but I like them too. I love them too. But she really, that nursing age, that toddler age, man, she could do that all day. Not everybody like that. So you want to have people dealing with that age group where the parents can feel that energy. They can feel that love. They can feel that commitment. Mr. Lori? Okay, you want to back up. Okay, go ahead.
Willing disciples.
Yes.
Go chase or bend their arms or try to this, then that, there's work to be done.
Right.
The second is we are gonna have to really get rid of some of these old traditions around here.
Right.
Because, we can't wait to start changing things. And then go out and get the people to bring them in. We should be doing all of that stuff.
Right. Right.
We should be in the midst of all of that.
Right.
Go out.
Right.
And bring other people in here, younger families.
Right. That is correct. So since Lori said willing disciples and the process of change should already be in motion. All right, it's very good. Very good. So some of what you all are saying, I'm actually going to get to a little later in my outline, but it's good that we're all vibing along. So the point is, what are some things that we need? So in my example, I give you a couple of examples. I give you like infant and toddlers, middle school. Now, if we do a day camp, I'm gonna suggest that be our target. Why would I suggest that we have a day camp for the summer of 2023 and we target infant, toddlers, and middle school age children? What is so special about that group? Anybody? Over, let's say, teenagers. Huh? They're the future. Okay, what else? Anybody? Okay, well, let me help you. Because that age, they're still relying on mom and daddy, grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, older siblings. They're very impressionable. Their threshold in terms of getting to them is a lot lower. They respond really, really well to love and encouragement. The parents have a lot more gratitude around you're serving them. Why? Because often our society doesn't think about them. Now, there are people who do marketing to children and stuff who know that's a gold mine, because here's why. Because if you can get that 2 or that 3 or that 4-year-old sold on a product, then what are they going to do the rest of their lives? How many of us have been going to McDonald's our whole lives? Tell the truth, okay? A lot of us have. A lot of us have. That's because they started with happy what? Meals. And those little toys. So you always associated going to McDonald's and getting your Happy Meal. And they've just kept it going to where now, we don't even think about it. All right. I'm suggesting that maybe we target that group. Now, do you think that there are children that age in this community? You better believe. One of the things that we want to do is to look at our research, which I'm sure we've done, on what is the demographic of kids and families in this community. That data is available. And if we want younger families, younger kids, then we kind of know, okay, this is how aggressive we need to be toward it. When those families hit that door, they ought to see that we have prepared and we are ready for them. Yes, sir. Oh, y'all want to back up? Okay. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Praise and worship. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's say that that's a conversation that the administrative team needs to have. Good point. And that's a good discussion point. I will say that very few places are all things to all people. Unfortunately, unless you have some kind of unique gifting as a congregation, it's going to be difficult for you to be effective at every age bracket, all the way from infancy, to the senior years. Now, am I suggesting that we ignore certain groups? Absolutely not. But I don't want to get bogged down there. I'll just tell you that's something that we'll have to discuss. But that's right along the lines, because we're thinking about targeting. Okay. Now let's say my next example, that we have an environment that's geared towards senior care. The retiring baby boomers is the largest demographic in the country. The largest demographic in the country. There's a whole new market being developed, or that's been in the works, to try to target that market. A lot of them can retire. They can retire and be fairly affluent. They can travel. A lot of them have kids and grandchildren that they're caring for. So let's say that part of our approach is, maybe it's a 5-year approach, and maybe year 1 and year 2, we focus on this. Year 3 is a transition year. Year 4 and year 5, we focus on that. I just want you to think about targeting and who are we best suited to attract and to keep. All right. There is a relatively big market around senior care. And maybe we have an approach where we have a couple days a week, an environment where seniors from the community are invited to come, and they are invited to do any number of things. And it could be some traveling, it could be some mentoring, it could be, coaching in some way. I mean, it's all different kinds of things. And I'm not wanting to get bogged down on it. I'm just trying to get us to think about targeting and who we can prepare for with this Matthew 4 model. When we don't have a specific group that we're preparing for, then it's almost like a shotgun. You can shoot the gun, and that bullet, it sprays, and you may or may not hit your target. But if you got a smaller gun, where it's just one shot, poof, then you get that. All right. So targeting, I want to suggest, is a biblical model. Targeting, I want to suggest, is something that we need to entertain that idea. And we need to have robust discussion around what that needs to look like here. Now, I'll give you another one that's not on the paper. We're right down the street from USC. What do we have for college kids? Y'all don't think that we don't have college kids who are interested in the Lord and God and trying to live a certain kind of life? There are. Maybe because of proximity, that's a project that we work on. And we coordinate with, the appropriate agencies on campus to try to create an environment. How many of you know what SNCC is from back in the day? Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. John Lewis, Freedom Riders. You all don't know your Black history? Oh, okay. John Lewis, who is late John Lewis, his claim to fame was being a freedom rider. He was already being talked about, but when he and his young contemporaries rode those buses to be disobedient in a civil way And those Southern law enforcement people, they beat them down. If you don't believe me, look, type in Eyes on the Prize, John Lewis, Freedom Riders, and you're going to read all about what happened. Those were kids that did that. That bracket is that age bracket is particularly receptive to things, and maybe we have some kind of approach that's designed toward them. I'm just saying, you know, what are we structured for? And for people, this is a freebie. For people who are uber talented and gifted, it's a turnoff if you're not. Your people who are real talented and gifted are not going to be in a place where we're not struggling around this. We're going to attract top tier talent in this space when we get serious about targeting people and developing an approach to go after it. That kind of activity for people who got the real goods, and you've met them in your respective professions. How many of you know people in your field who are exceptional? That could be you. A lot of times you'll have people who are sitting on the pew, you don't even know what they do. They're polite enough to come, say hello, put in a few dollars, volunteer here and there, but that's about it. Because their perception is, y'all not really serious. Why would I want to waste my time and y'all not serious? Yes, sir. Why not? It's Bible study.
I appreciate that. I'm thinking about, you know, people traditionally are drawn to people.
Yes.
Example, Brother Hogan back in the day. Certain people just love him in his style. They're drawn to him.
Right.
Harold Pitts, he was another.
Right.
He was drawn to his dynamic and John Green the way that they talk.
Right.
All different types of people, whether they be older, middle-aged,
Mm-hmm.
younger, they love the style of those ministers.
Mm-hmm.
And so another thing, talk about how to bring people in. Oftentimes, people are attracted to a particular individual.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I'm not trying to make Brother Hawkins' head big, but I love his style. I
Uh-huh.
love the way he brings his lesson, his dynamic. That's just me. And I'm just saying that people are oftentimes drawn to individuals based upon how they bring, just like Joel Osteen, people just like the way he talks.
Right.
And so a lot of times, you know, again, you know, people are drawn to, without you just necessarily going out there to target somebody specifically.
Mhm.
Hey, I like the way this brother brings his message. I can relate to him, whether he's younger, I mean, whether it's a younger crowd, older crowd, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, middle-aged
Mhm.
crowd.
I don't disagree with you. I think you're exactly right, but that's still a form of targeting. That's still a form of targeting because, and that's what you're saying, is that you're attracted to a certain kind of preaching personality or preaching style. So we want to cater to people that like that style. There are some people who can't stand Joel Osteen because he's just too weak. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Again, that's a conversation that we need to have because I asked Kendall to tell you, Kendall, I just sent you some advertisement this past week, and I just asked you, do we do anything like that for our preacher? Didn't I? I sure did. So I think we ought to do a better job of marketing our ministry. And I will come to that another time, but very, very good. Okay, so the point is we want to be thinking about who we want to target. So if we're looking to do a day camp in 2023 and it needs to run for 12 weeks, we probably want to start now getting ready for next summer and what needs to change about us to be receptive. You know, are we going to have to do some grant writing? Do we have enough time? to get some money to, really have a cutting edge day camp where the kids learn archery and swimming and bowling and, they get to travel and, see different Christian colleges. I mean, let's dream big. What's the use in having a lot of money if we don't spend it or invest it in ways that the church can really, really benefit? All right. Okay, so so I hope you get the idea about targeting, and we've kind of looked at it from a couple of different perspectives. And it's something I want you to think about. Who are we on the hunt for? When you sit down and watch programming today, somebody's hunting for you. Somebody is trying to get you and your resources. That's what sales and advertising are all about. So you may not think that you're already involved in this. Not only are you involved in it, but you're already a victim of it. We all are. There are certain companies, approaches that they were successful in reaching their target. Okay, and I'm just trying to get us to to start thinking along those lines. Now, can we be all things to all people? What are some variations of that? We can talk about that at a higher level once we get going. I'm just kind of wanting to engage some thinking. All right. Now, the next piece that we're going to get at is the home life and exampleship, which is really the bread and butter of the approach. There is a reason that the people of God are called a family, the family of God. The family is the premier institution on planet Earth. I was listening to a special the other day on NPR, and they were talking about some aspects of the family and just how vital, it is. And I was just thinking to myself as I was listening to it, man, they are so right. So what we need now to think about, and I'm moving from targeting now, is assessing the health of our families. Assessing and evaluating. Assessing is not evaluating. Evaluating is not assessing. When we assess something, it's more of a survey. So let's say we have 73 families. That's not an evaluative statement. That's an assessing statement. An evaluating statement is more along the lines of the functionality of that family. Let's say that in that family we have 40 single parent homes, we have 20 this, and we have, okay, now you're starting to get to a point to where you're beginning to critique, okay, our families and kind of where they are. The Matthew 4 model is based on Jesus's discipleship model, in that when Jesus called the guys, he really welcomed them into this new family he was forming that would later become the church. So our model is going to need to follow that same strategy or approach. So you want to be thinking about, okay, is my family ready to take on a couple of other families, or maybe another family, or maybe a certain kind of family? Or is my family prepared to get the training to be instrumental? And maybe we pair together with another family, and between the two of us, we take on a family. However you want to think about it, we can't get to being successful using the Matthew 4 model if we don't have some sense of our families and where our families are. Okay. And there are some things that we want to look at. I'm going to go to the scriptures here in just a minute. And I just give you just three. It's probably more than this. Again, this is informal. When you think of solid families, I think of attendance. Do we even see you with any regularity? If we don't see you but once or twice a month, and y'all do know that members of the church come in shifts, right? Y'all do know that, right? I know some of y'all think y'all come every Sunday, but a good part of us come in shifts. All right. But when we talk about families at this level, and that's all kidding aside, we want you to be committed to what we're doing here. And you got to be here every time the church door is open. How many of y'all came up doing that? I know I did. And that may not have been what you did, and that's fine. But when I'm not doing this kind of stuff, I kind of low-key feel guilty because I know where I need to be. Stewardship, they know how to manage your resources. And that's your time, your talent, and your treasure. You know, every family has available hours that they could dedicate towards something. All of us do. We work 8 to 10 hours a day. With traffic, add another hour or two on. We still got a few hours of daylight every day that we're dedicated towards something. Most of our families have, you know, some type of skill set to do something. What are you using it on? And then finally, a lot of our families are doing pretty well financially. Some aren't. Okay, well, whatever. You know, a solid family, they know about stewardship. And then just generally speaking, a disposition of commitment. You know, sometimes people are committed, but they need more attention along refining and polishing and developing. All that comes about in discipleship. You know, if you are such a together person, if your family is such a together family, and you're not discipling another family, you're not as together as you think you are. Because the ultimate act of maturity is not how much money you make or what you know or where you went to school or where you went on vacation. The ultimate mark of maturity is your ability to help another family. If we don't make that a priority, we are dooming ourselves to have a lot of rich, wealthy, fat, and I mean that in the sense of, you know, a fat calf or a fat cow who's eating good, but we're not really positioned to do much of anything. So think about our families here at Figueroa. And I don't mean no harm. I mean, I haven't, you know, I'm not throwing shots. I'm just thinking about the concept and how to apply it. We can't attract families to sadness and melancholy and mediocrity. When people hit that door, if they don't see vibrancy and life and energy, nobody want to be around anything that's dead. You know, Felicia and I had an interesting time in Phoenix. And I'm a spiritual warfare guy, you know, all that stuff and this other dimension, the demonology and all that. I've been a student of that for many years. I think I've told you my story on that. But here's the thing around deserts and stuff like that. The demonic is particularly powerful in dead places. And it's because there's an absence of life. Even in the Bible, when they would put that sin on that goat, they would let that goat escape to the wilderness, because that's where wilderness, desert, dry, barren, ain't nothing growing, everything's dead. That's where the demonic thrives. That's why we got to fight to keep things vibrant and energetic at the church. But the challenge is this, the challenge is this, is that many times we end up fighting each other And that's so sad. It's so sad because we fighting the wrong person. So where are we with our families? 1 Corinthians 11:1. Who can read that for me? Anybody? And then Acts 2:42-47, and I will probably be finished with my lesson for today. And as you see, I still got a long way to go. But 1 Corinthians 11:1, who can read that for me? Anybody? I think that's what I want. First Corinthians 11:1. Uh-huh. Very good. Be ye followers of me, even as I follow Christ. That is the ultimate act of maturity. If the leadership wants to know how solid you are, then all we really need to ask you is, who are you discipling? It's not any more complicated than that. Acts 2:42-47 is it's right after Acts 2:38, which is what we spend a lot of focus on, but that ain't the end of the story. You're going to see that the apostles went from house to house. It's all kind of familial and communal language in the establishing of the church. And I won't take the time to read it, but you read it and go back and read it with that in mind. We like the Acts 2:38, but that's where it's beginning. That ain't where it's ending. And our families need to be geared around this whole house to house thing, in that your home is not a museum. Your home is a lab. It's a place where change and growth and breakthroughs happen. That's what your home is like. When you set your table and you feed your family, part of what ought to happening is some transformation taking place. Is that our kids ought to be eating from our tree, eating from our lives, and they're taking in things that's going to help sustain them and grow them, and their friends ought to be there too. Man, I'm telling you, we have totally missed the ball with doing family here in the West. We have these lifestyles, and it's just all about comfort and convenience, and it's just, I know God is just I don't know what God is thinking, but I know that most of our families, and it's my fault as a church leader. And I've been a church leader ever since I was a teenager. Anybody who was in Normandy can tell you 13, 14, and 15, I was leading. So some of what I'm telling you, I'm so passionate about now because I feel guilty, because I know I missed the ball and I'm trying to make up for it. But our families need to be geared around creating a home where other families can come in and they can come to know Christ. They can be better fathers. They can be better mothers. They can be better grandparents. All that needs to happen in our home. So let's say we do our day camp and we say we want to reach 100 kids. All right. Maybe to do that, we need 40 families. Well, then we need a curriculum to get our 40 families ready to take on these 100 kids. It's not in now. How receptive do you think those kids are going to be if they're interacting with a family that is committed to their growth and their development? They're going to break their neck to try to please you. So I'm saying that the Matthew 4 model has a lot to do with our families. Now, your family does not have to be a traditional nuclear family. mom, dad, and kids. You could be a single parent and have a family. A lot of us are single parents, not because we want to, but that's just the way things develop. All right, well, get up, brush yourself off. Let's keep it moving. All right. Our families probably will look like the families that we bring in. That's a good thing. So let's say we have a couple of single families with a couple little kids, and then a couple little kids come to our camp and they're being led by single parents. You all already have a lot of things in common. And by the way, that's probably going to be better than having a nuclear family be instrumental, because there are some behaviors and ways of doing things as a single parent that maybe a traditional family just not going to understand. But because you've been there, you understand. Maybe we have a couple of divorced people. It's all good. Then you don't think that some of the kids that we're going to bring in come from a divorce home? Maybe you're a grandparent raising your kids. You don't think there are grandparents out there raising their kids? Man, I'm telling you, it is so common. So don't think that when we say this, that we're only thinking about the mom, dad, and the kids. Man, we need all kind of families. Just maybe your family is just a single man. That's cool. And so just all types are needed, but we need a way of calling, inspiring, getting a group of families committed to take on this major task in refocusing. So rather than focus on your vacation to Europe in the summer, which is good, and I'm not hating on going to Europe. I hope to go there one day. That's good. But I just want you to be more deeper than that. I want you to think about, and I want you to pray about God using you and your resources to impact and just maybe you and your family get together and you pray and you come away with, next year, we want to help 3 families come to Christ. And that's what you build your life around. So the kids learn from an early age. Okay, we're going to have some kids coming over that probably don't share our values, and we don't want them to influence you. We want you to influence them. So I'm saying our curriculum needs to touch. It's all about our training. But we train now for what we want to do in the summer. Now, and this is the last thing I'll say, and we'll come back to a healthy personal life, because I can't run through Purpose-Driven Life. That's the best-selling book next to the Bible in the world. Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. So I got to spend time on that. But let's say, first of all, that we get a nice brand new sign out front.